Hey guys, how's it going? So UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Teixeira just wrapped up, and I'm going to run through the card and give you guys a breakdown and recap of everything that happened this event, so let's just get straight into it. And we started off with Fatima Kline versus Melissa Martinez. So I said that Fatima Kline was going to take this one. I said by a decision win. I was actually correct, but it actually ended in a finish surprisingly, which I didn't expect, but we'll get into that. So the first round opens up and Martinez is struggling to deal with the rangy approach of Kline. She's sticking on that back foot, sticking her with jabs, kicks to the legs, kicks to the body, just staying at range and mixing up sort of her shot selection with the occasional kick to the head. And it's resulting in Martinez being pushed back every time she tries and close distance. And even in the close exchanges, it was fairly even. If not, Kline was actually landing the bigger shots, I thought. So a pretty clear round for Kline. Round 2, similar to the last round, but in this round, Kline starts sort of entering the clinch a lot more, especially against the cage, where she's able to land these knees, these elbows, and even attempt some takedowns of her own. And this was Martinez's best round, but still, she couldn't really overcome the volume of Kline, and it was a pretty clear Kline round regardless. Third round, very early in the round, Kline lands a very clean kick to the head, followed up by a three-piece combo. It didn't really knock her down or have her out or anything, but it did hurt her and had her stumbling back against the cage. And for the rest of the round, Kline sort of picked away at her from distance as she was on the previous rounds, but she was just pushing forward mainly. But midway through this third round, Kline fakes a left hand before landing this brutal head kick that snapped up, clearly connected with sort of the temple area of Martinez, put her down and out. Yeah, not much else to say. This was a really fun sort of finish to start off the card. It was a bit boring before the finish, but very, very clean finish to start this one off. Next up, we have Mitch Ramirez versus Mike Davis. So I said that Mike Davis would take this one by round 2 submission. It did actually end in the second round, and Mike Davis did win this one, but it was actually by a knockout, which I was kind of surprised at. So round 1 opens up, the fight almost ends in the opening seconds. Ramirez shoots for a takedown and gets caught in a guillotine when trying to get up. And again later, sort of maybe 30 seconds later, he gets put in a very tight rear naked choke and somehow survives, but he was in that for a good 30 seconds or more. And for the rest of the round, Davis maintains back control, keeps threatening the rear naked choke while landing some big elbows. Almost submitted him at the end of the round twice, I think. A very, very dominant round for Davis. You could even argue 10-8, but I wouldn't say. But some of the submission attempts were very close. Round 2, back on the feet. It seems like Ramirez is sort of going to win this round. He's catching Davis with some big shots. He's sort of throwing caution to wind and throwing a bit wildly. And Davis is looking a little bit worn out from that first round and all the grappling. But when Ramirez would throw big, he'd often get caught with these counter shots from Davis when overextended. And near the end of the round, Ramirez starts getting a bit reckless, gets tagged with a knee to the head against the cage, and then Davis just lands a series of punches. One of them clips clean, puts Ramirez down, ends the fight. He wasn't out or anything, but he definitely would have if follow-up sort of ground and pound was allowed. It's not like he was going to come back. Very impressive win for Davis. He looked absolutely dominant in the grappling in the first, absolutely dominant on the feet in the second, a bit patient, but still. But I see big things for Davis in the future. Yeah, good performance from him here. And next up was Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Valter Walker. Now, I picked Kennedy Nzechukwu. I said round 3 TKO or KO. One of the two, I think. It was actually Valter Walker that won this one, and it was by a round 1 submission, which I said would be a possibility, but I just couldn't see it. Turns out this guy's a king at heel hooks. So round 1, instantly Walker starts running towards Nzechukwu, and I mean like running. Like he's just sprinting at him, throwing these crazy hands. Landed big to the head of Nzechukwu and pushed him up against the cage where he takes him down very quickly. And when Nzechukwu gets back to his feet and is trying to sort of fight the body lock that Walker has on him, Walker kind of falls back, pulls guard a little bit, grabs his leg, and then locks it in a heel hook position where he cranks it hard. I mean, it looks horrible. It looked like Nzechukwu's like knee and sort of calf area were about to burst. Taps very, very quickly. Valter Walker wins this one. First round submission. I think a minute into the round, heel hook again. I mean, I don't know what this guy does in the gym to be so proficient with his heel hooks. Yeah, very, very good win from him, but not much else to talk about. This guy's an absolute menace with the heel hooks. Moving on from that, we had Lauren Murphy versus Eduarda Moura. So I said that Moura was going to take this one by a decision win, and I was correct. So round 1, volume-wise on the feet is pretty even, but Moura is landing the bigger shots. Mainly her counter shots are what sort of won her this fight. Murphy is surprisingly the first one to shoot him for takedowns though, but she gets reversed very quickly, taken down herself, in which most of the round she just remains on bottom, taking some serious damage ground and pound wise from Moura. And then just for the rest of the round, nothing really impactful was thrown on the feet, so Moura took that first round. Round 2, the leg kicks from Moura are starting to sort of mount up and become very visible this round. She's also landing the biggest shots this round, the damage being very visible on Murphy's face. And like the first, while Murphy is the first one to shoot him for takedowns, it's ultimately Moura who's actually getting them and looking a lot better when it comes to the grappling and wrestling, holding that dominant positioning, so I thought she won this one as well. Round 3, surprisingly good comeback round for Murphy, with her controlling Moura in a cage clinch for a good portion of the round, before locking in a guillotine that was really tight. I thought that Moura was going to tap to it, and it was in there for a very long time. She stood up with Moura still in this guillotine, tried to crank her on the feet, still couldn't get it done. Moura escapes. And then just for the rest of the round, it's sort of the same tune as the last 2 rounds. Not much is being thrown. Moura's landing the biggest shots, but really nothing impactful is really being thrown. Ultimately, it goes to Moura, who took a 29-28 decision, and Murphy retired, which was probably for the best. I think she was 41, and her past couple of fights, man, she just hasn't looked amazing, to put it lightly. So yeah, she retired, probably best for her. A decent win for Moura, but nothing crazy. Next fight. And next up was Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani. So I said that Jake Matthews was going to take this one by a decision win. I thought it was actually going to be very close, but Jake Matthews did win this one, and it was by a very impressive first round submission. So the fight opens up. Njokuani very early on is trying to keep Matthews at distance with these rangy kicks to the head, to the body. He has a way of whipping them to the body and head very quickly without sort of his opponents knowing. But Matthews sort of puts up his guard, grits down on his mouth guard, bites down, walks forward, grits through it, and manages to close that distance, where he gets Njokuani in a clinch and is able to find an opening to sort of throw Njokuani to the ground. It wasn't really a takedown, but it was pretty close. I think they did still score it as one. And while Njokuani was getting back to the feet, Matthews jumped on the back of Njokuani, locked in this rear naked choke. It wasn't really completely in, and I think the commentary team was calling it a short choke, which I think is just a modified version. It looked the same to me. Njokuani stands up, he's trying to buck Matthews off. He actually stands out for a surprisingly long amount of time, but Matthews just stays on the back, has his leg locked in, not leg lock, body triangle locked in, and Njokuani can't buck him off. He ends up tapping because he's about to go out. And yeah, Matthews got a very impressive first round submission. I didn't actually think this one was going to end in a finish, and if it was going to be Njokuani. But Jake Matthews looked really good this fight, and he showed that sort of he has levels in both area. Both his striking's pretty good, but also his wrestling's very good as well. So I'm excited to see what's next for Jake Matthews. I don't know if he'll get a top 15 opponent, but we'll have to see. Next fight. And closing out the prelims, we have Max Griffin versus Chris Curtis. So I said that Chris Curtis was going to win this one by a decision. I actually joked, but I'm going to say that I was being dead serious just so I can lock it in, that it was going to be by a split decision. And Chris Curtis won this one by a split decision. I mean, it's kind of predictable that it would go to a split decision, but I actually don't think it was as close as a split decision would let you believe, but we'll get into that. So round 1, Curtis is holding the center of the octagon. He's marching forward on Griffin in a way that Strickland does. You can tell that they train together because he's sort of marching forward with this Philly shell, using that to sort of defend anything that Griffin throws, opposed to holding up a guard. And he's sort of pick and choosing when to land his shots. His jab and his cross are the main thing, but he also was landing some nice combinations. Griffin did have a moment after they sort of clashed heads on accident where Curtis started complaining to the ref. He backed up against the cage where Griffin just started landing some big damage in a combination on him. Cut him open above the head from the head clash, but outside of that, didn't really do much. It did look really bad, the fact that Curtis was cut above the head. It made it look like Griffin did a lot more damage than he did, and Curtis was making it close at points in this round, so I did think this was a lot closer than the judges probably thought, but still I had to give it to Griffin. Round 2, very strong round for Chris, with him sort of hurting Griffin early, having him tripping over himself and circling around on the back foot, with Curtis even dropping Griffin when he tried to step in and sort of exchange. And for the rest of the round, Curtis is using his head movement and his footwork to move out of the way anything Griffin's trying to throw at him, landing his own big shots in return with counter punches. I thought that was a pretty clear Curtis round. And then we move into the third, one apiece. Much slower round than the last, with Griffin coming out hot from the start of the round but slowing down while Curtis slowly picks it up as the round goes on. He's punishing the body of Griffin a lot with these large lengthy combinations when they enter these exchanges. And while Griffin would land every here and there, Curtis was sitting on everything that he was throwing and absolutely ripping to the body of Griffin. He wasn't really doing as much damage to the head, But either way, it goes to the scorecards. Curtis takes the decision, and keeping with the tradition of him, it goes to a split decision where one of the judges gave Griffin the third round, which I don't agree with. I thought it was a pretty clear Curtis round. But either way, Curtis takes it, split decision, of course. Yeah, next fight. And opening up the main card was Junior Tafa versus Tuco Tokkos. So I said that Tuco Tokkos would take this one by a round 2 submission, and I was dead on with this one. Tuco Tokkos submitted Junior Tafa in the second round. We'll break it down. Round 1. Throughout this round, Tokkos is consistently taking Tafa down, holding him up against the cage and then getting him on the floor, and then just holding him on bottom position while threatening submissions. Tafa does have his moments this round, landing some really hard elbows in the clinch especially, and reversing position in the last 10 seconds where he started raining down some big ground and pound, actually cut the forehead of Tokkos open, but most likely Tokkos this round, primarily due just to Tafa staying on bottom position for so long, sort of looking up at the clock, seeing how far he can sort of ride it out for, and was just never really able to get back to the feet. Second round opens up. Early in the round, Tafa cracks Tokkos with some big overhands, one of which drops Tokkos, with Tafa diving in trying to finish the fight with some ground and pound. Couldn't quite get it done, and when they return to the feet, Tafa ends up backing up against the fence where once again he gets taken to the ground. Both fighters are incredibly tired at this point, especially Tokkos from wrestling that whole first round. With sort of Tafa being content to stay on bottom position while Tokkos doesn't really do much with top control. But with a minute left, Tokkos manages to sneak in an arm triangle that Tafa ends up tapping to, with Tokkos winning that fight. Wasn't the most amazing fight in the world, but wasn't horrific, I guess, but yeah, a bit of a nothing burger this one. Next up on the main card, we had Vitor Petrino versus Austen Lane. So I said that Vitor Petrino would take this one by round 2 KO. I just saw Lane as being a bit too chinny, and Petrino's submission game it's decent, but it's not amazing. I was actually correct about Vitor Petrino winning this one. I didn't even know he was moving up to heavyweight, which is obvious now when you look at his opponent, but still. But he looked very impressive here. Got a first round submission, so didn't quite get the method right, but yeah. So round 1, not much happens on the feet before Petrino catches the leg of Lane while he throws a kick, takes him down, takes full mount very easily, and then from the top he also manages to lock in an arm triangle, but instead of sort of locking it in, he postures up and lands some very big ground and pound with Lane being sort of forced to give up his back to prevent getting TKO'd, to which Petrino quickly takes the back and in the closing minutes of the round locks in a rear naked choke that Lane sort of holds out for a surprisingly long amount of time, but you could see that it was getting to him. He ultimately taps. Petrino takes an impressive first round finish here. Good debut at heavyweight. I'm actually kind of excited to see if Petrino will make it in the heavyweight division because, you know, he's very lean for heavyweight. You don't really see fighters this lean in heavyweight. They're usually kind of blobs. But Petrino looks good, so I don't know, maybe he could make a run at heavyweight, we'll have to see, but very impressive win to start off his heavyweight career. Moving up the main card, we had Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charriere. So I said that Morgan Charriere was going to take this one by round 3 KO. I just said that he's going to tire Nate Landwehr out and then sort of find the finish in the third round when he starts to let his hands go a little bit more. And I pretty much got this one dead on. Morgan Charriere won this one, third round KO, pretty much the way I predicted, except a little bit less wrestling, but we'll get into it. Round 1, very early in the fight, Charriere starts chopping at the lead leg of Landwehr, and the damage shows up pretty much instantly. It's these 2 massive welts on his calf. And while early in the round Charriere was winning in the striking, Landwehr does start to land some big shots on Charriere later in the round, and when Charriere starts to take him down, he manages to get back up to the feet very, very quickly, and that happens about 4 or 5 times. But despite that, I still think Charriere won that first round. Round 2 starts off as a firefight in the pocket with both fighters landing big on each other with combinations. There is a moment halfway through the round where Landwehr gets kicked in the cup and the ref pauses the fight, which Landwehr sort of gets angry at, starts trying to hype the crowd up in the meantime to return to the fight. And then when he returns to the fight, he unwinds, like sort of winds back and throws this cartoonishly absurd sort of haymaker towards the head of Charriere. He just manages to duck under it, but this was something that like he was throwing with his whole body behind it, and if it connected, it probably would have put him out. But alas, no. And outside of that, this was a much better round for Landwehr. He's landing a lot more with some serious impact as well. Most likely taking the round, but it is pretty close despite the sort of punch stats, because Charriere was kind of landing harder, but Nate Landwehr was landing more of these hard shots. But it doesn't really matter because in the third round, very early in the round, Charriere lands cleanly on the temple of Landwehr with an overhand. Backs him up against a cage where on wobbly legs, sort of Charriere starts to smell blood. and just follows up with these massive two-piece hook combos where he's sort of just wailing his arms around, just trying to land clean on the head. Uses up pretty much all of his energy, so thank God he actually managed to put Landwehr out here. But he connects clean, puts Landwehr down with one of his shots, has him decently out. It's not like he was out cold, but had him out enough to stop the fight. Very, very impressive performance from Charriere. Landwehr, despite losing, actually looked a bit improved from his Doohoo Choi performance. So, I mean, kind of good performance from both of them. Definitely Fight of the Night winner. In fact, I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure it would be. But yeah, very fun fight. Probably the best fight of the card, this one. Next up was Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia. So I said that Steve Garcia was going to get it done by round 1 TKO. I might have been a bit over the top there. With hindsight, I don't know why. But Steve Garcia did win this one. It was by decision, so it broke his finishing streak. But still, a very, very good performance from him. Round 1, pretty slow round to start with. Neither fighter was really landing anything big. Mainly just both fighters trading single shots, with Kattar not really throwing much at all. And the round would most likely just go to Garcia through consistently throwing these kicks to the legs and to the body of Kattar and landing the occasional combo, while Kattar just sort of stayed on the back foot, didn't really do much. Second round, same thing as the sort of last round. Neither fighter was really throwing anything that was round taking. Garcia is constantly pushing forward, though Kattar's on the back foot for a lot of the round, while Garcia's like pushing forward, landing volume, landing more impactful shots. Kattar did pick it up this round in terms of how much he was throwing, but most of it wasn't really landing, and Garcia just kept sort of tagging him up, just was levels above him when it came to the striking in this one. And then in the third round, looked sort of a bit better pace-wise. Both fighters were throwing a lot more, especially midway through the round. But Garcia lands big on the chin of Kattar, I think near the end of the round, dropped him badly, almost had him out. Kattar gets back up to the feet, holds Garcia against the cage for a little bit to recover. Garcia breaks off, and you can tell that Kattar is hurt. He's sort of circling around on the back foot, kind of on wobbly legs, while Garcia's sort of chasing him down, trying to find a finish. But he recovers fully. And from there, Garcia just keeps pushing forward on Kattar. Kattar doesn't throw much back, sort of the theme of this whole fight. And when it goes to the cards, Garcia takes a 30-27 decision. Very impressive performance from Garcia. I'm not taking anything away from him here. But I think this is more indicative of sort of Kattar nearing the end of his career. His past 3 fights have been like this. He just hasn't done much in his fights to justify taking any rounds. We saw it in the Yusuf Zalal fight. Aljamain Sterling was a bit different because he was just kind of getting wrestled the whole time. But it sort of seems like he's not the old Kattar we see, who used to rush in, take some damage and give some damage back. Now he just sort of chills on the back foot and takes it most of the time. So kind of sad to see that happen. Good to see Garcia get some recognition, because I always knew he was sort of a good up-and-coming prospect. But we'll see what his run looks like in the featherweight top 15, and we'll move on to the next fight. And now we're on to the co-main event, and this one is kind of controversial. Stephen Thompson took on Gabriel Bonfim. I said that Stephen Thompson would take this one by decision. I just thought he'd have better volume and be able to sort of deal with any grappling threat from Bonfim. And I was somewhat correct, but Gabriel Bonfim won this one. Split decision, very close, and a lot of people will say robbery, but we'll get into that. So first round, very, very slow start to the fight. Bonfim sort of chopping at the front leg of Thompson. Thompson's mainly just hanging around on the back foot, not really throwing much back. But midway through the round, Bonfim rushes in, takes Thompson down before taking the back, and almost locks in a rear naked choke. But Thompson manages to tuck his chin in and eventually escape, where he reverses position, lands some good ground and pound, and gets back to the feet. But in the end, I think it was just Bonfim's takedown and submission attempt that sort of won him the round. He also had a big shot near the end of the round that sort of wobbled Thompson. So I thought that was a pretty clear Bonfim round. Round 2, Thompson starts to pick it up this round, throwing a lot more kicks to different parts of the body. But very early on, he gets held up against the cage for about a minute with, what's his name, Bonfim, racking up a decent amount of control time. When they separate, Thompson does start letting his hands go a lot more this round, avoiding Bonfim's takedowns and wrestling as well. Late in the round, Bonfim splits the shin open of Thompson, though. It opens up a cut that was massive and causes him to sort of trip over, which looked like a knockdown, but it was actually more his leg giving out than anything. But Thompson stands back up again and actually managed to head kick Bonfim with that same leg, I'm pretty sure, that had Bonfim almost out. He follows up with a combination that had sort of Bonfim on his last legs before diving in and trying to get some ground and pound. But the bell goes off, Bonfim gets saved, but I still think that was a Thompson round, despite sort of the check to the shin that caused Thompson's shin to bust open and all that control time against the cage. I think that final sort of 30 seconds won that round for Thompson. And then in the third round, they're one apiece. And despite the massive gash in his shin, Thompson just keeps throwing to the body and head with that same left leg that is incredibly damaged. Around halfway through the round, Bonfim gets Thompson up against the cage where he holds him there for, I'm not even joking, probably 2 minutes, maybe a bit less. And then in the last minutes of the fight, he does the exact same thing, holds him there. Thompson does occasionally sort of reverse position and get sort of the dominant cage clinch position, but it's mainly Bonfim, but it is really just stalling. He's not really doing much. He's trying to target the busted open shin of Thompson, but once again, it's not really doing much. Similar to Mario Batista Jose Aldo. But I think despite the cage clinch, I thought Thompson took this round pretty clearly. He did actual damage this round, which I think should be the biggest scoring point. And he did have the biggest shot this round, which was a nasty head kick at the end of the round that damaged Bonfim a little bit. Didn't have him out or anything, but it was sort of a nasty head kick to finish off the round. But it goes to the judges' scorecards with Bonfim winning a split decision in a very similar fashion to Mario Batista vs Jose Aldo, where that third round and the sort of stalling against the cage was what did it. Yeah, I thought Thompson was robbed. I don't like screaming robbery because I can see how you could score it for Bonfim, but either way, I think Thompson did get done a bit dirty, especially when it came to sort of the fact that he did more damage, but yeah, I could see Bonfim sort of make his way up the chain. Kind of sad to see Thompson get beat like this, but it is what it is. And now on to the main event, Derrick Lewis versus Tallison Teixeira. I had that Tallison Teixeira was going to win this one by round 2 TKO. I did acknowledge though that, you know, anything can happen in a Derrick Lewis fight. It's not like that was a solid lock-in for me. That was kind of a 50-50, but I just don't really know how much I trust Lewis. But man, Lewis has that dog in him. He won this one by a round 1 TKO. Very, very impressive win, but there is a little controversy around it. So fight opens up and there's really not much to say about this fight. Almost instantly in the fight, Lewis lands a big overhand left on Teixeira that knocked him down badly. Didn't have him out. He's sort of scrambling to get back up. Lewis dives in, lands some big follow-up punches while Teixeira's making his way back to the feet. He's actually grabbing the cage to get up, which I don't think is legal. I know it's not legal when you're wrestling, but if you get knocked down, are you allowed to grab the cage to stand back up? I don't think so. Maybe that's why they called it, but either way, he's making his way back up to the feet. Actually gets to the feet where Derrick Lewis is still kind of raining down ground and pound, but Teixeira's not really faltering in any way. But the ref still jumps in, stops it, standing TKO, I guess, or maybe just TKO. And while I don't think it was the worst call, it was really, really early. It felt a bit unfair to Teixeira, especially after Teixeira landed some big shots early in that fight that maybe had Lewis hurt. I don't know. Lewis seemed like he was hurt, but he also does have this habit of faking sort of being hurt so he can attract his opponents in where he can land his big shots. But either way, it reminded me a bit of the Cannonier Robocop stoppage where maybe give it another 30 seconds, maybe he would have been out, but it seemed a bit premature. Either way, a very impressive first round TKO from Derrick Lewis, with him taking his pants off as usual. He threw his cup into the crowd, flashed the crowd, you know, the usual Derrick Lewis behavior. He actually went up to Tallison Teixeira's corner and pretended to be a dog and sort of peed on them, lifted his leg up, pretended to pee on them. And one thing that I don't think I'll ever see again, while he's getting his sort of name announced as the winner, he's on the phone with someone that turned out to be Donald Trump. So that's something new. Derrick Lewis is always coming out with something to sort of surprise us. Good to see him win. Yeah, not much else to say. Bit early, but still sort of a good finish. Tallison will be back, he's young. But yeah, good win for Lewis. So that's it, guys. That was UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Teixeira, and a breakdown of everything that happened this event. How did we do this event? We're back. We got 75% on who would win correct, which, I mean, it's not the best, but better than it's been recently, so let's go. We got the method by 44%, which I also think is pretty decent. Cam did a lot worse this week, which is also nice to hear. Only 50% of his predictions on who would win were correct, so we're back on top. Where would I rank this card? This card was actually pretty good. There were a few sort of weird moments. The main event was weird. The co-main event was a bit of a robbery, I'd say, but overall, very, very strong start to the card. Bits and pieces were not the best, but overall, I'd say this was a very solid card. So I'm going to actually put it pretty high. I'm going to put it in the middle of B tier. Below Cejudo versus Song Yadong, but above Edwards versus Brady. Yeah, this was a very solid card. There was a bit of like less name value, and from an outside perspective, you look at the main event and you think the card's going to be absolutely horrible. But it wasn't that bad. It actually had some surprisingly good performances. I mean, it had Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charriere in another fight that it's not going to be fight of the year or anything, but it was a very fun fight to watch. You had some very nice finishes early on, and it was just an enjoyable card. So I'll see you guys next week for UFC 318. Yikes. Yeah. Bye bye.